So as you can see today, I'm going right back down memory lane. I'm getting married. The wedding, the cake, where we live, our home, our car, what will my life be like? Oh, the babies that I'm expecting. Everything's going to be so wonderful. But hold on, take a moment. If you're getting married, what does it mean for your finances? What does being married, when two become one, what does it really, really mean? That's what we're going to talk about today on Good Eve. Come and join me for the ceremony. Hi everybody, my name is Bookie and I'm here for the Good Eve channel. I'm a bit hyper today, Anyway, I think it's just all the memories of getting married. Oh gosh, I got married quite a bit ago. I'm not going to tell you how many years it's been, but it's been an interesting ride, a little bit of a roller coaster, but all in all, it's been fun. Thank you, my love, for all you do. But what we're talking about here today is, are you getting married? So if you have a cousin, a sister, a brother, someone that's getting married, this video is for them. And what are we talking about here? Finances. What does it mean now that you're getting married? Now in this video, I'm not really going to talk so much about the cost of a wedding. This is not a wedding review, although that gives me an idea. I probably should think about doing something like that, right? But what I do want to talk about here are the implications of when you have tied the knot, after the partying and the wedding ceremony and the beautiful clothes and all that festivity, when everyone leaves you and goes to their homes and leaves you guys to yourselves. The two of you have come together now. What does it mean? Why is being married, even from a legal standpoint, so different from being single? And that's what I just want to touch on today. Because a lot of people, you're surprised, don't really realize just how much their life is going to change financially and legally when they get married. So, according to Merrill Lynch, there are about 6 areas that you need to be cognizant of. You need to bear in mind, keep in mind, are going to be impacted significantly when you get married. The first one is the good one, right? Potentially you now have 2 incomes, right? Or there's the potential for 2 incomes. So in some couples, have you decided if both partners are going to work? Have you decided if one partner is going to stay at home, have kids, or look after the children while the other person may have kids and work? Have you thought about that? But you have the potential, because it's 2 beings who have the ability to go and commit their time to labor to make money. So potentially and in reality, most married couples make a lot more money than singletons or single gals or boys or all the others. So that's one of the things that's definitely going to change now that you're married. The second thing you need to think about are retirement, and this is a bit gloomy, death benefits. When you're single and you retire, it's one income you've been working at and it's one pension plan. But if you're married, that pension plan is shared between both you and your spouse. And in the case of death, you also need to be thinking about how your spouse is taken care of in that time. Even death goes beyond just the financial aspects of it, because even medical care for your partner or your spouse, in the law, most couples, your significant other is your next of kin, and they have the right to make, life and death decisions over your medical care, which can also have financial implications. So for instance, I know, really gloomy, if a partner, for instance, is in a coma, how long do they stay in that coma for? The spouse gets to determine that. If there's a do not resuscitate, if they ask you to, to pull the plug, for instance, it usually falls fully within the purview of that spouse. And For every day that spouse remains on that support, there's a cost implication versus not. And so it's really important to realize that as a spouse, you should have a living will, for instance, which talks about your medical decisions. Do you want to be resuscitated? What do you want to happen to your organs? Because you have to understand it's a really, really emotional time. And even though you're just married and you're married together for a limited period of time, there are family members of your spouse who have known this person longer than you, who may have even given birth to your spouse, and they feel even more vested and more entitled to make health decisions on their behalf in their best interest. But unfortunately, the law puts that responsibility in the hands of you, the spouse. And so if you're trying to balance that, it's really helpful for if both parties have articulated their desires so that all the frustration and the emotional backlash doesn't just boom hit the surviving spouse, but they can understand that the spouse that was impacted had already made some decisions. Now, stepping away from that, and it's still in the same vein, a third point that you need to consider when you get married is estate planning. And estate planning talks about when you are no more, down the road, maybe you have kids, who do you want to get your stuff? So when I talked about retirement and death, I was talking more about the health implications of having someone who could take care of you and be with you. And then I touched lightly on the fact that there's a pension, right? But when it comes to estate planning, both of you have lived this life together. And hopefully you've accumulated stuff together and you're thinking the house or the car or my jewelry or just so many different things, stocks, bonds, shares that we've been able to accumulate. How do I want them to be distributed when I'm not here? And the truth is, most of the law provides for, if in the event that your spouse passes away, the other spouse automatically gets everything, unless otherwise stated. And this can be sometimes traumatic in families where, for instance, their family heirlooms that they wish to be passed down, maybe to all the boys or to all the girls. And if you haven't spelt out and made these things very clear, a lot of tension can come into place with families and the surviving spouse if they, for instance, just choose, which they're legally allowed to do maybe dispose of the heirloom or give it to someone else, or they just donate it to a museum. They could do something that could really cause a lot of pain. So when it comes to estate planning as a couple, you really need to come together. You can't just think about only yourself. You have to really be thinking about yourself, your partner, and sometimes the implication on the wider family. Fourth point I'd like to touch on are taxes. I know everyone thought this was going to be a romantic video. Sorry to disappoint you. There's a lot of administrative work that goes into being married and remaining married, and taxes is one of them. So there's some tax benefits of being married, but primarily not really. Most of the tax benefits come from being able to claim dependents, which now more increasingly is not strictly within the purview of married people. I think when a lot of the tax laws were set out, they focused on the fact that and functioned under the assumption that only married couples would have children. But as we've seen today, a lot of single parents can have children, and they also are eligible to claim relief on their income, relief from their income for depending on the number of dependents and children that they have. But for married couples, there's some tax benefits, but not really too many. In fact, in some countries, it actually works out cheaper if you don't get married from a tax standpoint. But I still think it's a romantic and it's a nice thing to do. So get married. Don't say you're not going to get married because you won't save as much as you expected on your taxes. So point number 5, debt implications. Now, as a married couple, I'm going to break it to you. Unless you have a prenuptial agreement, and even then, that only deals with debt before you got married. Any debt you incur while you're married, and in many cases before you got married, is no longer a single person's debt. It is collective debt. You are both responsible for payment. So, for instance, if you get divorced and you're like, well, when I came into the marriage, I had no debt, but he had $100,000 worth of debt. If you did not have a pre-existing agreement that addressed that before you got married, you are taking away at least 50% of that debt. But I've used all my money to buy the house, so I should take the house by myself and he should take his debt. Nope, 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 nope. Doesn't matter if he or she did not contribute to the payments in the house. Typically, the way the law looks at it, you're both one entity. They look at total debts, total assets. They'll do a calculation, and the judge in most cases will award something that looks more equitable, around 50-50 on both. So what does that mean? You need to know your partner's debt before you get married. What do they owe? Because it's not just them anymore. Both of you now owe this money. And you need to be clear that you're ready, willing, and will not resent them for taking on this debt. So does that mean you shouldn't marry someone that has debts? I didn't say that. But you should make an informed decision around that. Because after y'all get married, you guys need to work on it. You can't get married and say, no, that's his own debt. It's his own student loan. I'm not going to help. And then, but I have no, so I'm fine. You're not fine. If he's not fine, you're not fine. If she's not fine, you're not fine. So when it comes to debt, you take on the other person's debts. Okay? Debt is shared. It's no longer the other person's, it's our debt. So bear that in mind. So the sixth and final point deals with family obligations. Now, this is not necessarily a legal point or even a financial point, but it doesn't have bearings on both. What responsibilities does your partner or yourself do you have towards your family? Are you sending your siblings through, putting your siblings through school? Are you responsible for helping your mom or your dad or your parents pay their rent? Are there things that as a family you had made commitments to before you made a decision to get married, in which you're an essential part of making those things successful? Do you have a family member that perhaps is ill, that you've committed to 1 day a week or 2 days a week to provide care along with the others? You have to bear some of these things in mind. Now, that doesn't mean that you're bound to these obligations forever, but your family, your spouse's obligations, in a way, especially when it comes to family, many ways become yours as well. So you need to think about, oh, no, he'll stick with his family there and I'll stick with my family here and we'll meet in the middle. That might work for you, but a lot of times the truth is, if you're doing this for life, you're going to have to help him with his obligations and he's going to have to help you with his family obligations. And so it bears, reasoning that you need to understand what is he committed to, and he needs to know what you're committed to. And you guys need to sit down and be clear, how are you going to navigate this? So if it means you're both going to have to step back a little bit, what kind of substitute support can you provide? If you can't be there to provide physical care, like I always take my father to his medical appointments, that could be an example. My dad is late, so I don't. If you're not able to do that anymore, is there another solution that you can provide? Can you swap that responsibility for something else? Can you provide someone who can do that for him and pay for it? I mean, those are some of the things you need to begin to think about in terms of how things will change when you get married. The truth is, a lot of marriages are negatively impacted by a lot of measures, but two primary ones. One, finances. Not understanding it, not having enough money or enough of it. They're also impacted by family. You're not just marrying your partner. And really, you should be the most important person to your partner once you get married. That is true. But you're not just marrying him. You're also marrying his history. You're marrying his mom and his dad in a way. And I mean, I don't mean that they live with you, but his interactions, the things they've taught him or taught her. You're marrying all those things. You're marrying their culture, the things they believe about how a married couple should behave, or how a husband should interact, how a wife should interact. So it's really important that you understand and you learn as much as you can about that culture, about that family, and figure out where you can fit, so that there can be this consciousness of, okay, we're going to have to cut ties here and adjust. And then there's the consciousness of, oh no, I want to embrace this and merge and be a part of this. And so you know where the boundaries need to be set and you know where the doors need to be. So I hope what you've learned from this video is that getting married and thinking about your finances, it means so many different things. And I'm not talking about the wedding. I'm talking about doing life together as a couple. What will change? The high level things that will change in your financial situation. How the two of you will decide to build wealth. How you'll plan for retirement and death. How you'll do your estate planning for the future and for your beneficiaries in the future. How you're going to handle your taxes. How you're going to manage your debt. Debt for one is debt for all. And then finally, how you're going to weave your family obligations into this. It can be so beautiful if you get a lot of these things right. So I hope that this has helped today. And I just want you to remember, in all things, be humble and learn. Bye for now.